This is freaking awesome. I just got my hands on a Voodoo 3 1000, which isn't the Voodoo 3 2000 or Voodoo 3 3000, but this particular variant of the Voodoo 3 is the lowest clock of the bunch, but it has the second TMU out the gate. You don't need to do any kind of registry hacks, and it also has a 16 Megs RAM. And this particular card has SG RAM, which is the more higher quality RAM, which is usually the limiting factor when you try to overclock these things. But if you find a Voodoo 3 1000 out in the wild, you should definitely pick it up. We're going to benchmark it and test it out, see what kind of performance we're going to get. Not only were you going to the stock T450 with the Pentium 3 processor and this Voodoo 3 1000, we're going to flash the BIOS, and then we're going to upgrade it to an 800 megahertz slot 1 CPU, model number SL4KF. And you look over lines and you try to check forums and trying to see if you're going to spend $60 on an old Pentium 3 slot 1 CPU and if it's going to work with your system or not. And you get a lot of mixed answers. But if you have the same system and you find this particular variant, the SL4KF 800 megahertz Coppermine Pentium 3 slot 1 processor, you do the BIOS upgrade, which I'm going to walk you through, then it should also work for you. I don't see why it wouldn't, but let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, so if you could find this update, it's the BXPST_11. And you have to run this within Windows 98. And by putting a blank floppy in your disk drive, running this executable, it creates a bootable floppy with the BIOS. Let's just pop a disk in and hit Y here to write that bootable floppy so we can get this BIOS flashed. All right, we hit enter. It'll exit the program. I'm going to go ahead and shut down. Actually, we're going to restart. And we just need to make sure that the removable, or we got to set the floppy drive as the first bootable media for this particular system. So it boots from the floppy now. Just hit delete, get in the BIOS. Go ahead and double check and make sure that the floppy drive is the first boot device. Go to the boot tab, and first boot device is set to removable devices. That should work. So don't have to save in this particular case. So we'll go ahead and hit no and pop the disk in, reboot, and let's see what happens. Okay, it sees the floppy drive. It's booting from the floppy. Going to press the any key if only we could find it. All right, and then to confirm, we are going to replace A04 with A11 and hit Y and just sit back and hope nothing breaks. And this is in real time. I haven't sped this up, so you know how long it should take on it if you decide to flash a BIOS on your Dell. Okay, success. All right, we're going to go ahead and reboot and take the floppy disk out. All right, we're looking for A11, hopefully. When it boots now, we can hopefully see A11 for the BIOS version. Hit spacebar here to get to the actual BIOS and not see Dell's splash screen here. So here we go, version A11. Fantastic. Some of the instructions for installing a new CPU. So we got to move the jumper over. We got to shut the computer down, move the jumper over, take the CPU out, put the new CPU in, turn it on, and then we got to set and make sure the CPU parameters are correct. At least we're going to go by the manual. I actually found it. So I already moved the jumper over. So as you can see in the bottom, it says entered configuration mode, and it's registering the 800 megahertz CPU. All right, so it's got the 800 megahertz CPU, which is exactly what we want to see. Now we're just going to go on the BIOS and just double check the CPU settings. And everything looks good. So we're just going to save and exit. And then hopefully we get the prompt to, yeah. So shut down the computer and move the jumper back over. And that is how you do a BIOS flash and CPU upgrade on a Dell XPS T450. So first up in the benchmarks, we got Quake 2 and OpenGL. And in the lower resolutions, you can see that there's quite a performance difference. And finally, at 1024 by 768, you're getting GPU limited. For some reason, I can't get 1024 by 768 in the Glide benchmark to run, but an 800 by 600 and 640 by 480, you can see that even with the lower end CPU, you can squeeze out more frames in Glide. And you can see how efficient Glide was as an API back in the day. And this is why it was so popular with the Voodoo cards, because you're able to get so much more frames with a lower end system. Look at Unreal. It's amazing how much the CPU is holding this back, even with the Voodoo 1000. And it's not until you get to 1024 by 768 where you're making the GPU the bottleneck. But you're almost getting 100% increase in performance by upgrading the CPU, which I understand the between 450 and 800 megahertz is a significant jump. But it's just amazing how well the Voodoo 3 scaling is with the higher end CPU. I wonder how high of a CPU you could need to have in order for you to tap every little bit of performance that Voodoo 3 has. And in Quake 3 OpenGL, we have quite a significant performance increase in the lower resolutions. And even at 1024 by 768, we're getting an extra 6 frames, which you're getting more of a CPU you're finally reaching the limit of the Voodoo 3 1000 even at that resolution. So, and last we got 3D Mark 99 and 2000 with pretty significant performance gains in both cases. Even though the slot 1 CPUs are getting expensive if you go beyond 500 megahertz, the performance increase is pretty substantial with these old Voodoo cards. The CPU scaling is no joke. So hopefully you enjoyed that as much as I did. In the next video, we're going to look at the performance between a Voodoo 3 1000 and a Voodoo 3 3500, the battle of the OEM cards. From the top to the low end. How much performance is left on the table? We'll find out on the next one. Hopefully I'll see you there. Till next time.